when you finish your training and certification, you are going to likely want to start building your own business or building your own practice. And while we don't have enough time in our time together to really get into the business building side of your work, it very much is an area that we want to be able to support in the best ways we can as a charitable organization. So way back when you and I had our conversation and I delivered the presentation about the state of palliative care, you may remember that one of our 5 key values was collaboration. So it's in that spirit of collaboration that I want to talk to you about the idea of how entrepreneurialism and leadership can build success, and specifically how that can build success for your practice and how that can build success for Home Hospice Association, a win-win all around. You will be working on an assignment in your certification process that will allow you to really identify the gaps in care in your community, whether as an infant and pregnancy loss doula or as a death doula. And so what I want to do with this presentation is build on some of what you may uncover and how together we could potentially fill those gaps. And I call it bricks on a donor wall because way back when, in another life, I was what was considered a parachute CEO, which is likely a term you've not heard before. But my job was to go into owner-operated businesses, and acting in the role of CEO, I was there to take a top-down look at the operation. And one of the areas, even before I got into hospice work or before my passion took me on a charitable journey, so moving into a charitable entrepreneurial environment, one of the things I consistently noticed with the clients that I had was how little attention they paid to what I called at that time being a good business citizen. How were they being known in their community by the social enterprise work that they were doing? And what I often heard was that the reason they didn't venture into that area in any real way was because the amount of money that they felt they had to contribute to a charity would put them very low on the donor wall. So I'm going to use the example of the Princess Margaret Foundation as an example. Canadian Cancer Society would be an equally sufficient example, but Princess Margaret for me is one I think about so often because they raise hundreds of millions of dollars a year. As a matter of fact, the last campaign goal I saw of theirs was $1 billion with a B dollars. So if you could imagine contributing to a $1 billion fundraising campaign, you would have to be making a pretty substantial donation to get anywhere high up on their donor wall. For those of us who might have a few $100s, or for those of us who might not have any money at all, but have some talent or skill or special thing that we're able to do to help that organization grow in a big charity, it's very hard to move up on the donor wall. And so when I would do my parachute CEO work, I always had a piece of my consultancy with them that I called "Where do you want to be on the donor wall?" And based on where you want to be on that donor wall, that really helps you make some decisions as to what charities you might want to align yourself with as an entrepreneur. So obviously, I would like it if you aligned yourself with our charity. So what I wanted to do in this presentation is talk to you a little bit about what some of those options might look like in your community. So this builds a little bit on our state of palliative care and how you can change that in your community, and kind of digs in a little bit deeper as to how we might be able to make some of those changes together for our mutual benefit. Spirit of collaboration means partnership. Partnership means equal value, in theory, for both partners. So in my case, or in this case, I want to make sure we do talk about equal value in both partnerships. So the first thing I wanted to talk to you about was public awareness or community awareness. And I think this is an area that often our death doula and infant and pregnancy loss doulas don't give enough consideration to. I can tell you that many of our candidates and subsequent certified death doulas and infant and pregnancy loss doulas have managed to gain significant media attention by finding ways that our two organizations, or they can work with our organization. As an entrepreneur, you calling your local television station and saying, I have a great story to pitch, might not be all that interesting to them. Saying that you are contacting them on behalf of a charity and you have a great story to pitch, now you might start to get their attention. So never lose sight of the fact that you can use us as much as you want to gain that media attention in your community, because it does help both of us. So in these two pictures, the one that is on your left is City TV in Toronto, and it is one of our death doula candidates being interviewed about the work that she is doing, or she was doing at the time, with our death cafes. And I will talk a little bit more about our death cafes in just a few minutes. And so what's really interesting is City TV, as well as in the past CBC, has found our death doula or infant and pregnancy loss doula candidates, or found our death cafes through our social media. So never lose sight of the fact that that media is always looking for interesting stories. So in this case, City TV came and interviewed us as the host organization for the death cafes, and in this case, our death doula candidate, who was running death cafes, runs death cafes in the city of Toronto. On the other side, and you might recognize these two people, because if you haven't seen their videos yet, I'm sure you've seen them in a group discussion or you will see in their presentations. But this was an example of where College Boreal, so a community college, invited us to make a presentation about how infant and pregnancy loss doulas and death doulas work together for the betterment of their community. So in this case, because it was quite far away and we didn't have a lot of human resource in the area of College Boreal to be able to deliver this presentation, two of our facilitators went. But this is another example of a way that we could work together to bring more awareness and more education to your community for the work that you do. And again, when you're attaching it to a charitable organization, the likelihood of somebody paying attention is going to mean much greater. On the same side, and again, you might recognize two of these people in this particular slide, but there is a presentation, and all of the things that I talked to you about, or all the things that I mentioned in my presentation today that you're listening to and watching, all of these templates will be made available to you should you want to utilize them in a collaborative relationship for both of us. But Glenn, as our funeral director facilitator, and in this case Sue attended because this was a funeral home contact that she had, but we do have a presentation that we could do with you as infant and pregnancy loss doulas about how infant and pregnancy loss doulas can work with the funeral director. We actually were contacted by a provincial funeral home and cemetery association in January to do a presentation on the funeral director and the death doula, how they work together. Unfortunately with COVID, the conference was canceled, but we are back in contact with them to look at how we can deliver that virtually. So again, those professional presentations, don't lose sight of how important they can be for building your practice. In this example, as an example, the relationship that Sue has established with the funeral home in her community means that Our Babies Our Grief group that she runs is often completely sponsored by that particular funeral home. So great ways to build your business, great ways to build your relationships, but also when you utilize the benefit of working with a charity and being a practice or a business that's in support of a charity, again, more doors will often open. The other picture, and you will learn as infant and pregnancy loss doulas more about our comfort cozies, but this is a great way for you to establish a relationship with social groups. So whether it's Rotary, whether it's Kiwanis, whether it's a retired teachers chapter in your community, whether it is a church group, often many congregations will have coffee breaks, they call them, where ladies of the congregation may come together. Oftentimes they're looking for projects, they're looking for guest speakers. And we have found that coming and presenting the comfort cozy is a great way to get some support in your community, spread the word about what you do in the community, and again, subsequently bring some awareness about how we're working together to be in best service of the community. Comfort cozies, again, if you haven't had that presentation yet, you'll learn a little bit more about them for infant pregnancy loss doulas to have as part of their toolkit. But they're a very easy knit or crochet project that, again, many groups in your community may be quite interested in helping to make for you, so that you've got an adequate number in your toolkit. We've even actually had some infant and pregnancy loss doulas approach craft shows. So again, around Christmas time especially, so many churches will do Christmas craft shows, and they're often looking for unique items or unique approaches to crafting. So we've had even infant pregnancy loss doulas who have gone to Christmas craft shows, and sometimes they'll donate a table to you because you're doing it on behalf of a charity. And what they've done is they've recruited people to actually make comfort cozies. So oftentimes, at a craft show, 50% of the people are there because they can't make anything, so they're looking for things to buy. The other 50% are there because they're very crafty and they're looking for ideas. So again, don't exclude some of these very cost-effective and possibly free, if you're attaching to a charity, opportunities for you to network and in a very soft way promote and educate people, in this case, on what an infant and pregnancy loss doula does and who are the infant pregnancy loss doulas in their community. Again, this is another example of how letting your community know the work that you're doing we're able to bring media attention. In this particular case, it was TFO, which is Television Francophone Ontario, who came in to cover a French-speaking death doula candidate in demonstrating the work that she does. So as you can tell by this picture, it is definitely not a real client that she is supporting, but what we were asked to do or to help her with by TV Francophone Ontario was to stage an experience of what she had experienced in her training, so that they could explain sort of how her journey. So how did she become a death doula? So again, culturally, socially, you may be part of a community that would love to have this kind of experience, and these are the sorts of things that we would be so proud and honored to be able to work with you to actually make happen. In the work that we do, again, in that spirit of collaboration, our role is to help you and hopefully in turn, you are helping us in many ways to establish relationships with existing agencies in your community. So this is just a very small number of organizations or partnerships that we have been developing. As you can imagine, by the Kitchener Waterloo, Humane Society of Kitchener, Waterloo, Stratford, and Perth, very specific to our death cafes. We have death doulas who also are pet lovers, who run death cafes specific for pet lovers. Ottawa Public Library, we are now officially part of their programming team, thanks to one of our death doulas in the Ottawa area, and we're now delivering their death education collaboratively to the Ottawa Public Library's client base. And then you have organizations like Hospice Toronto and Hospice Aurelia. Hospice Aurelia is one of the hospices that we've gifted Our Babies, Our Grief to. So a great connection for our local infant and pregnancy loss doulas in that area. And Hospice Toronto, they're actually pioneering the collaborative partnership with our organization to set the standard that would make death doulas a paid position within local health integrated networks. So again, a big partnership that, thanks to some of our death doula relationships, we've been able to develop, not just in that particular case, especially not just for the sake of the local death doulas that we have in the GTA, but because Hospice Toronto is truly a pioneer in community hospice. Anything that they do sets a standard for the rest of the country, certainly for the rest of the province. And it's kind of exciting. Scarborough Centre for Healthy Communities, we actually partnered with them to establish their Experiential Day Hospice program. So again, as I mentioned in my state of state of palliative care in Canada, our Experiential Day Hospice program is a very popular gift or collaboration that we are able to offer to community hospices. And again, for any death doula or infant pregnancy loss doula that really is gravitating to the legacy work, some of these opportunities are really quite exciting. So again, we have a unique opportunity to help you build maybe larger relationships in your community. And I certainly hope that these are some opportunities, with your entrepreneurial hat on and with your leadership hat on, you would consider as ways to both build your practice and also ways for us to be able to, take our movement and just move it forward even more so. It's like the tide, right? Or it's like how a snowball gathers momentum as it rolls down the hill. The bigger it gets, the bigger the momentum, the bigger the momentum, the bigger the movement, the bigger the movement, the greater the chance we all have to meeting the goals that we have, both professionally and within our philanthropic endeavors, whatever those might look like for you. So again, we've talked a little bit, or I may have hinted a little bit, about our death cafes. Definitely an area that we strongly encourage both our infant and pregnancy loss and death doula candidates and certifieds to get involved in. You will not find a better way to subtly promote the work that you do, as well as help bring more awareness to overall what work Home Hospice Association does. But most importantly, and if any of you have seen any of our information about our death cafes, you will see, we use the slogan talking about death won't kill you. One of Home Hospice Association's mission goals is to normalize death. And again, getting back to the idea that it takes a village to also support at end of life, one of the things that we believe is most important to fulfilling that particular mission is normalizing death. If we can make people less afraid and more embracing of the inevitable, the better chances we have to give people what they consider a good death. So, where they want, how they want, with whom they want, that's a good death. and the more we're able to normalize it in the community, the better the chances are that we have. What's interesting about this, and this is, or one of the reasons why I love to use this example, is we often find ourselves struggling with the idea of connecting with a particular faith group. I hear oftentimes that, events shouldn't be run at churches, or events shouldn't be run at funeral homes, even though those are two resources that are often happy to donate space. But it's the perception of either triggering events or triggering effects going into a funeral home, or the perceived affiliation with a particular faith group. And the reason I love to show this particular example is because where St. Peter's is located, they're in Cambridge, as you can probably tell by their website. They're on a very busy main street. And so I can conclusively say that 75% of or more of the people that attend their death cafes, and they do them on a very regular basis, or did before the COVID word, come because they drive by the sign every day. They're not members of the congregation. So again, I think a great example of the fact that most churches are in highly trafficked areas, and so it doesn't mean that you have an affiliation to that particular faith community. It means that they are also looking for community outreach. So again, I like to use this example because I don't think you should ever discount any partnership, especially if that partnership comes with a complimentary space. When we get back to be able to meet in person, I think these opportunities are really quite amazing. And if I can digress for 1 second and tell one very quick story, one night at one of the death cafes, one of our St. Peter's volunteers was standing at the front door just to see if anybody was coming in a bit late. And a young man was walking by, and he saw her standing in the doorway. And so he said to her, "I think you have a typo on your sign." And so she said, "What do you mean?" And it said, "Well, it says Death Cafe. Surely it means," it was supposed to say something else. Not sure which word he thought was wrong. But she said, "No, it is a death cafe." So after some conversation and a little bit of convincing, she actually talked this young gentleman into joining our death cafe. And even though our death cafes are not support groups, and we say that very clearly, as it turned out, this young man had lost his brother a month ago to an overdose, and he felt judged in his community. It was a perception of judgment. It was a perception of judgment. But Cambridge is a small community, and he felt afraid to seek support because he felt that those who he might seek support from would judge him because of how his brother died. And so in the time he spent at the Death Cafe, he found out how we could also offer him some grief support, and subsequently was able to connect with one of our death doulas who wanted to specialize in grief support. So again, potentially partnering with a faith community doesn't mean that you are subscribing to that faith, or it doesn't mean that you are narrowing your scope of practice. It just means that you are being inclusive and you are looking for as many opportunities for partnerships as you possibly can. And I love this picture because, again, it's on such a busy street. We bring more people in to have conversations at that location because of where that sign is. And I just think it's a wonderful example of a great community partnership. The other thing that, again, I guess maybe attached to our death cafes is our children's death cafes, and they're called Creating Awareness and Normalizing Death for Youth. And so it was actually at an adult death cafe that the inspiration for Candy Club or Candy Cafe actually presented itself. So again, for our infant pregnancy loss doulas especially, who are finding themselves building a practice or developing specialized communication skills for, the other children in the family that are now witness to or affected by that pregnancy or that infant loss. Extending your practice to encouraging the conversation with young people about dying, death, and grief is, again, another great community service that you could offer. A great way for you to be known as a responsible citizen within your community, within your business or practice. And again, always in the spirit of collaboration, a great way for us to work together to build up even greater resources in your community. In my State of Palliative Care presentation, I told you about the specific services that we've established to be able to offer to the organizations, the communities, the agencies, the leaders in a community that we partner with. Within those programs, we also have what we call pilot projects that we've developed. Within those programs, we also have pilot projects that we've developed. And the reason I show a picture of a bunch of dimes beyond the folklore that you may or may not have heard, which is when you find dimes, it's a loved one who has died sending you a message or letting you know that they're there. Our pilot projects work on a DIME methodology. DIME standing for Design, Implement, Monitor, and Evaluate. So that's why I'm showing you a picture of dimes, because this is the methodology that we use for our pilot projects. And pilot projects are another great way for you to get involved, to build your practice, and also to help maybe on some larger levels with the movement that we are growing within our community and across our country. So right now, we are actually actively involved in two very specific pilot projects. And the first one, which is the picture on your left, is called the Diana Pathway. And as, again, you start to dig into your certification projects, you will find that there is a practicum specific to the Diana Pathway, should you choose to take on something to that size. And the Diana Pathway, again, if you haven't already heard this in one of your presentations, is our care model for death doulas who are interested in supporting a client who is considering or accessing medical assistance in dying. So Diana was the very first client that we supported through medical assistance in dying, and one of the parts of her legacy that actually her husband Dan mentors us through, he's the chair of our Diana Pathway Pilot Committee, is the Diana Pathway. And so as a death doula who may wish to support through medical assistance in dying, and if you're interested in taking something on through your certification as significant as a full practicum, you would have an opportunity to get more actively involved in that, as well as helping us bring the Diana Pathway to your community. And then, of course, attached to that would be, hopefully, through your professional practice, you would want to be the key piece to that in your community. The other one is a pilot project we're working on called No Place Like Home. And this is to specifically identify and subsequently build a care model that meets the needs of any member of the LGBTQ2S community that is in need of end-of-life care services. It's amazing to read the information that is available about how so many members of the community feel they need to recloset when they are in a position of needing to access different kinds of medical care. And so for us, anyone of any age at any time under any roof, recognizing, as you may or may not have noticed already in our mission statement, that culturally sensitive human connection is a hallmark of what we want to bring to our dying and those who love them. Identifying, learning, developing, and being able to present a specific plan of care that meets the needs of any member of the LGBTQ2S community is a very important project for us, a very important mission for us. And so this would be another example of a pilot project that you may want to get involved in, and again, subsequently a new service or an enhanced service that you might want to help bring to your community. Throughout my presentations, both with the state of palliative care and obviously my conversation within this part of my presentation, I talk a lot about collaboration. And one of the other areas of collaboration that we want to be able to do is to support your professional practice by being able to hire you for clients that we may be made aware of. As a charitable organization, all the services that we provide, all the partnership work that we do with our agency partners to help them provide care to their community, all of those relationships that you might have an opportunity to connect with through the work that we're doing means that the care that we're providing to the client, so the person diagnosed and those who love them, including their pet, always comes at no cost to the person who needs us. In typical charity fashion, we have two types of clients. We have those who need our care, and then we have those who pay to ensure that those who need our care don't have to pay. So as your practice grows and as our working relationship continues, you will be invited when your certification is completed to become a preferred supplier to Home Hospice Association. This is a opportunity that is only available to the death doulas and infant pregnancy loss doulas that we train. Not because we want to force people to take our training versus somebody else's, but because we know what we're teaching you. We know how much importance we place on your certification steps, because these presentations and the following group discussions, they really just scratch the surface. There's so much more we need to dig into together, and the certification is our way of helping you do that work in the most cost-effective way. We're not asking you to come back every weekend every weekend a month, or we don't have weeks and weeks and weeks where there's multiple tuitions. This is it. And the certification process allows us to make sure that you are getting the most comprehensive training possible in a way that's most affordable. And so that's why we only work with our own trained death doulas and infant pregnancy loss doulas, because we know what you've learned. We've walked with you every step of the way. And so when that time comes, should you want to be a preferred supplier to us, you'll have the opportunity to work through that process. That said, and my final piece of collaboration is to always remind you that as a charity, we are only able to fund the work that our clients need through donations. And so one of the parts of our partnership that may sound a little more one-sided, because it's donation money to the organization, is doing everything you can to help us make our Moonlit Memory Walk the best, most amazing, successful event that it can be. It's a once-a-year event. Again, 2020 has been a year like no other, so I'm not even going to talk about 2020's event. It was virtual. That's all I'm going to say. And the concept behind Moonlit Memory Walk is around the power of collective healing. It's around the benefit of being able to tell a loved one's story, to say their name. And again, I know in your presentations and in your other group discussions, we talk about that a lot. So with the Moonlit Memory Walk, it's an opportunity for us to invite people who have experienced loss, regardless of the kind of loss or regardless of how long the loss happened, to come together and honor and celebrate and continue to memorialize that particular loved one. In addition to that, and this is where the fundraising piece comes in, it's also an opportunity for them to grow their loved one's legacy by inviting people and encouraging people to make in memoriam donations to the person they're walking for. So the Moonlit Memory Walk is a wonderful community service. It is an opportunity for us to bring people together, as I mentioned, regardless of what the nature of the loss was, or how long ago the loss was, in a safe, non-judgmental, loving environment. But it's also an opportunity for us to raise money to fund all the work that we do, including, and this is my commercial, any fees we are subsequently paying for your services because we have found a client through one of our agency partners that needs what you do. So in conclusion, I hope that I have explained well enough the way our collaboration would work. I hope I was able to preface it well enough to say, in the spirit of entrepreneurialism, quite frankly, even if you decided not to be part of Home Hospice Association's movement, as a business owner building your business, find a philanthropic connection. But find that philanthropic connection with an organization that is willing to honor your efforts in time and energy and what we call sweat equity, as much as they're willing to honor the check that you may be able to write. That is truly a partnership that you can make with a charitable organization, and is truly the partnership that we will seek to make with you should you choose to make Home Hospice Association part of your business model, part of your marketing, and most importantly, part of the philanthropic model that every business in every community needs to consider, because being a good business citizen is one of the best ways for you to build a successful business here in Canada. Thank you for listening to my part of this presentation.